There is but one single sports movie in the history of cinema that I not only like, but zealously love. Rush is that movie, and yeah, it's gonna get a video.
Nicky! What's wrong with the car?
Nothing. Car's perfect.
Niente, la macchina non ha nulla! What are you doing?
I'm stopping. But wait! Nicky Lauda's getting out of the car! This is sensational! It's too dangerous.
You want me to say there was a problem with the car for the media?
No. Tell them the truth.
Rush is a rivalry movie, and as such benefits from an easy-to-understand story-driving force, but it also must deal with the simple and ultimately shallow nature of such contests. To do this, Rush follows and explores the stories of Formula One racing rivals James Hunt and Niki Lauda symmetrically. They both fill the roles of protagonist and antagonist depending on the moment, equal parts likable and, well...
Hey, asshole!
Yeah, and this forces the feud to come from genuine clashes of personality and philosophies rather than a less interesting hero-villain dynamic. This equality of focus and empathy brings Rush face to face with another double-edged sword as the climactic showdown at Mount Fuji gears up, however. Ideally, by this point the audience is invested in both of the racers through their storylines, which is terrific, but Rush not picking a favorite means that it also hasn't picked a loser, which is not terrific because obviously one of the characters has to cross the finish line after the other. Therefore, to pull off the perfect ending, at least according to the traditional Hollywood sensibilities Rush has generally been adhering to thus far, the impossible has to happen. Both Lauda and Hunt have to win. This prospect appears particularly preposterous when we are first properly introduced to our leads. Hunt is established as a hot-headed playboy and adrenaline junkie, Lauda a calculating engineer and disciplined perfectionist. Hunt is living large, while Lauda has no life at all. It's professional craftsman versus passionate artist, and both are going for the same thing. Once the second act kicks in though, Rush gets to work differentiating the priorities of Hunt and Lauda via romance. Both Hunt and Lauda get married, but the film depicts their relationships quite differently. Hunt is given only a single, admittedly chemistry-filled scene with his wife before their punchline of a wedding.
You don't fancy getting married, do you?
And this marriage sours when his team goes broke and he can no longer race. It's quite clear that he cares far, far more about racing than his wife, firmly putting their eventual divorce as a him problem, not a them problem. Lauda's courtship with his partner, Marlene, is less steamy certainly, but it is undoubtedly more meaningful. Their wedding is quiet and sincere, far from the jokey setup and flashy framing of Hunt's ceremony, and the two share a particularly poignant moment afterwards in which Lauda confesses his uneasiness with this newfound happiness in the face of his dangerous job.
Es ist sowieso zu spät.
This perfectly sets up the film's pivotal midpoint race at Nürburgring and the most consequential, unfortunately literal, collision of Hunt's and Lauda's opposing viewpoints. After Hunt arrogantly shoots down Lauda's concerns about the track's safety, the race goes ahead and Lauda suffers a catastrophic crash that nearly costs him his life. After a grueling recovery, one that further establishes the bond between Lauda and Marlene, we arrive back at Mount Fuji for the third act race. The track conditions are deadly, as even Hunt comments, but the race must go on. With their lives and the world title on the line, Hunt and Lauda go head-to-head one last time. Hunt is all in. Even after he's told he's too far back to win, he braves the lethal conditions and pushes his luck further than any sane person would. Meanwhile, Lauda just walks away. Right off the bat, this is a bold resolution considering the type of story being told. This is one half of a rivalry at the climax of his rivalry-based film, deciding to just not engage in the rivalry. It's Rush rejecting the core device of its subgenre, but cleverly only when and where it has ceased being useful. Rush's dramatic core is still this feud, so it really couldn't and shouldn't trivialize it outright, but rather morph it into something positive rather than petty. A core beat of the movie is the acknowledgement that seeing Hunt continue to win fueled Lauda to fight on during his recovery, and while that value isn't completely disregarded, acknowledging it as not all important either does give Lauda more options for a satisfying conclusion. And that is how Lauda wins. Through Marlene, he has found a love greater than his obsession with racing, and a more balanced life not worth risking. And with Lauda achieving this sentimental victory, the literal victory is open for Hunt. The racer who wasn't really given any other definition of triumph can win his way. He finds joy with his love, and Lauda with his. Two protagonists, two happy endings.
Gar nichts.
Balance is the word that I keep coming back to when thinking about Lauda's concession and Rush overall. Even though we are meant to respect and approve of Lauda's prudent decision to stop, Rush also doesn't hesitate to give Hunt the glory once his death-defying risk pays off. This equitable ending is masterfully built up to through Rush's filmmaking too. The front end of the film is weighted a bit towards Hunt, and as such is fittingly filled with showy, sexy racing sequences. The shadow of danger certainly passes at just the right times to keep the leads and us on our toes, but the sport is still portrayed pretty romantically. However, after Lauda's crash, the back half of the film spends slightly more time with him, and by the time we reach the finale, the glory has subsided substantially to make way for the peril, which firmly puts the audience in Lauda's shoes for his realization that it isn't worth it. When I sat down to write this video, it occurred to me that this arc of Lauda's isn't a terribly drastic one. He was always the more rational and detached racer after all, so of course he'd stop, just as Hunt was always going to be the one to nearly die going for the gold. But I quickly realized that this is fine. One of the benefits based on true story films enjoy is that their typically less drastic and more realistic character changes feel just as big emotionally. Even putting aside the real world element, which I hesitate to do because I do find the fact that it all worked out this way quite astounding, Rush really shouldn't have ended any other way because of that initial decision to build the story around two leads. The film did validate both equally, more or less, so radical change was never really in the cards. As I said, nobody was made out to be the villain. Rush is more interested in painting engaging portraits of both men so that we can better understand why they did what they did on that rainy day in Japan. They were never going to transform each other, but they did show a bit of what the other was missing on the other side of their rift. For Lauda, that means recognizing when to turn off the car and live a little. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more movie making moments in the future, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to see more right now, we've got videos linked right over there you can click on and hopefully enjoy. Likes and comments are also, of course, appreciated. You can follow me on Twitter at @scaptiville, and I'm heading on a bit of a trip, but I will be back next month with a disabled comment section.